Hi, my name is Father Charlie Bouchard, and I'm here to help you know a little bit more about the Sunday readings before you go to Mass and hear them on Sunday for the 26th week in Ordinary Time. There are many different readings in Scripture which are very mysterious and hard to understand. For instance, just think for a moment about the creation story. It says God created the world in 7 days. That seems kind of implausible. We believe it, but we don't quite understand how it happened. It's a mystery. Or we think about angelic appearances in Scripture, of which there are many. And we, again, don't know exactly what this means. We don't know what the angels look like. We don't know if they look like people or something else. There's a lot of mystery involved in these stories, as well as in other stories in Scripture. The story that we read today in the Gospel, this well-known story about Abraham and Lazarus, is not one of those mysterious stories. It echoes a message that we hear many times in Scripture. It could be phrased variously as the first will be last and the last will be first. It could echo the blessings and woes that Jesus delivers in the Sermon on the Mount. And above all, it reflects the divine irony that appears in Scripture, where the rich will be poor and the poor will be rich. So the problem with this gospel reading is not that it's not clear. The message is absolutely clear. The problem is that we tend not to like the reading because it makes us a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe a lot uncomfortable. Most of us are very prosperous, and so when we hear this reading, we tend to identify ourselves not with the poor beggar at the gate, but rather with the rich man who seemed to have a lot of clothes and a lot of food. And so we get put into this unenviable position of maybe having stuff now, but worrying that we're not going to have it in the future. So we'd kind of rather just ignore this reading and not try to draw that dichotomy between the rich and the poor if it's going to put us in a disadvantageous position. And yet many of us have had exactly the same experience that the rich man had. At least in the city in which I live, driving down the street, on almost every street corner on most days, there's a poor person, at least apparently, begging on the street, approaching cars, asking for a gift. And it could be that, maybe the rich man didn't really see Lazarus, just like sometimes we don't really see these homeless people who are begging on the street. We see them, but we don't see them, because to see them, again, makes us uncomfortable. Or even if we see them, we can come up with all kinds of rationalizations for why we don't want to help this person. We could say, well, if I give this guy money, he's probably going to spend it on drugs or alcohol. Or we could say, well, I'm not going to help this guy here in the street because there are places that those people go. Or we could say to ourselves, well, what's my $1 or $2 going to do? It's not really going to help this guy any. He needs a lot more than that. Or perhaps we could even say that we're afraid to roll down that window because it's risky. We never know what these weird people are going to do, and we don't want to possibly expose ourselves to danger. But it seems to me that the main message of this story of Lazarus and the poor man and Abraham is not really about the beggar as much as it's about us. That it is asking really about our response to the poor, not about what Lazarus or the poor that we meet on the street corners are going to do with the money we give them, but rather, are we willing to extend our reach to them? Are we willing to step out of our comfort zones and to meet somebody new, somebody that's very different from us, but yet who is very similar to us? I lived in Chicago for a while, and I have a very good friend who lives there. And oftentimes when we'd be out walking on the street, he would meet a homeless person. And many of them were familiar to us. We saw them day after day after day. And yet I was very surprised when my friend Jim approached one of these people, and I saw him do this more than once. He approached and immediately opened a conversation. He knew her name and she knew his name. And I found out from him that her name was Dorothy, that she had been a piano teacher, that she grew up in Indiana but was now living here in Chicago. And I was truly amazed that he had spoken to her so many times and at such length that he learned all those things about her and that he really had an encounter with her as another human being, more like himself perhaps than unlike himself. And that always, that memory, that recollection of Jim and Dorothy talking together on the street always comes back to me when I meet somebody on the streets. It means that Jim was the kind of guy who would go out of his way to establish a relationship, maybe giving her $1 or $2, maybe not giving her anything, but recognizing who she was and that she, like him, was a child of God. So when we hear this story about Lazarus and Abraham and the rich man, we might be tempted to think about it as just a guilt trip, trying to guilt us into helping the people that we meet on the street, just like the rich man did not. And yet, I don't think it's meant to make us feel guilty. Rather, this story is an invitation to us to really see people that we encounter. Not just to see them in the sense of perceiving them with our eyes, but seeing them as persons who are like us. We could look at the rich man and Lazarus and say, wow, there's a big divide between these two, just as Abraham said from heaven. And yet, there is not that big of a divide. They are more alike than unlike. And so when we hear this gospel today, we should hear it as an invitation to meet some of those people, to realize that they are like us, and to let ourselves feel the empathy and the solidarity that is really a gift from God.